out either as we go along or save them at the end, depending on how things evolve. So at this point, I want to go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about this session. We're going to be doing an overview of SMU Cox and executive education. We're going to talk about our management versus leadership style. We'll also talk a little bit about the registration process, who the key contacts are. We'll be at the end of this program. And again, I've mentioned the Q&A process. So moving into the Cox Advantage. For the SMU Cox Advantage, we have just celebrated our 100th year. We are 100 years in business education. It was February 20th of 2020. SMU Cox has been an integral part of the business community. We are blessed to have wonderful instructors, true and tested content. We collaborate in a working method with companies and individuals to assure success, and we have a high value investment in leadership development. That SMU Cox, what is the difference in our approach? Well, we do train business leaders. We're incorporating principles and techniques of adult learning, which includes reflective learning and active participation, sharing of experiences, a variety of learning methods, and our instructors have credibility and humility and respect. And in terms of SMU Cox Executive Education, we have expert and engaging faculty that are definitely leaders in their field. We have relevant content-based topics that are leading in research. We have innovative tools that can help you put those tools to work today, and we collaborate and network with a diverse group of colleagues. This is also a very safe and challenging learning environment to think and test new ideas. So in our programs, we encourage participants to really test each other, test the ideas, do the case research, all of which will help develop the learning into a deeper format. So in terms of what is management and what is leadership and what is the difference? So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Luigi, and you can talk through the processes, the benefits of each.
All right, thank you, Sherry. Good to be here. Welcome all. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the country or world. It's good to be with you. So this will be a fun conversation today about two very important concepts and really practices, if you will. We're going to look at them from both perspectives, both the practical and the academic view, and see how those relate to each other. Just starting off with these two notions, I think the final answer here today is going to be that these are related concepts, but they're distinct. And we really want to tease out the distinctions between these two concepts, but then we want to also see how they're related. Just from a background perspective or history perspective, management science has been around since about World War II. It grew actually out of mathematics and operations research, and even to today, really focuses on more statistical and things that you can calculate relative to operations in an organization. Leadership was always a subset of management in the academic literature in particular. I think we've always talked about them in practice, sometimes synonymously, other times distinctly. Leadership, however, has really only been around for the last 20 years as a science, being studied by academics and also by practitioners. You know, you've got people like James Collins out there looking at the 5 levels of leadership and his research there. So we're going to kind of circle around these concepts and practices, looking at them from a few different perspectives, seeing their similarities, their differences, and learning more about both of these important topics. So I want to start with this definition here. This comes from Vinet Nair in a recent HBR article, where he says management consists of controlling a group or a set of entities to accomplish a goal. So there's that operational aspect I mentioned already. Leadership, on the other hand, refers to an individual's ability to influence, motivate, and enable others to contribute toward organizational success. So we have more of a motivational, enabling others aspect here. So that's one answer. My definition, so throughout this, I'll interject what my experience has been. I've been around management development now for over 20 years. Started with basic supervisory training at in a hospital system, and eventually graduated to management training and leadership training, which is where I have lived for the last 7 years, is primarily in the leadership space, and really more purely in the leadership space, as we'll talk about here, than necessarily management. Although I do teach sometimes in organizational behavior, which is another science within management. So management is more about maintaining the status quo, keeping order and control. It's about getting things done in the organization. Leadership, on the other hand, is more about inspiring and influencing others, really to embrace change and improvement. It's about creating an environment where others succeed. So that was pretty similar to Vinette in some ways. Now, the dean of Harvard Business School, Nora, says it this way: I think of management as working with other people to make sure the goals of an organization that they've articulated are executed. It's the process of working with others to ensure the effective execution of a chosen set of goals. On the other hand, leadership is developing what the goals should be. It's more about driving change. So there's that change aspect there. So in a simplest sense, leaders may be the ones who set the direction, the vision, the goals, and management is the one who executes them. In his book, On Becoming a Leader, scholar Warren Bennis presented a list of key differences. So let's look at his viewpoint. He's a very respected scholar in the field of leadership. The manager administers. Oh, it just went away, didn't it? The words are gone. Don't know where they went. I think someone inserted a picture and it's gone. I'm lost without my words there. Sorry about that. The manager maintains, the leader develops. Develops others, develops organizational improvement. The manager focuses on systems and structure. The leader focuses on people. So that's going to come up here again, where we're going to look at how both people and task components are part of all of our jobs, no matter where we are, from individual contributor to CEO. But management tends to focus more on tasks, and leadership tends to focus more on people. Bennis further adds that managers pursue goals through coordinated actions and tactical processes, or tasks and activities that unfold over stages to reach a certain outcome. So here we have that tactical operational view of management. Leaders, on the other hand, are less focused on how to organize people to get work done and more on finding ways to align and influence people in the organization. Now, Doc Norton, I like what he brings up here. So in terms of so we've made a number of distinctions here already. And here I want to show a little bit about how they relate and how they are connected in some ways, but still distinct. The title manager, if you will, broadly speaking, often denotes a specific role within an organization's hierarchy, while referring to someone as a leader has a more fluid meaning. So even as a CEO, you could be considered, in that sense, your title is a management title. When I work with organizations, say the senior leaders in an organization, sometimes referred to as senior management of the organization. So the titles can sometimes be used interchangeably, but let's go with his notion that manager, if you will, not literally the manager, but a director, a VP, a CEO is a title. It's a role and a set of responsibilities. And having the position of a manager does not make you a leader. You may focus more on getting things done and then on the operational side of things, being more task-oriented. Now, the best managers are leaders, but the two are not synonymous. Leadership is a result of a certain action. And if you act in a way that inspires, encourages, or engages others, you're a leader. It doesn't matter your title or position. So even as an individual contributor, you could be a leader in that sense. You don't have to be in a manager role or manager title. Ideally, a manager at the highest levels in particular organization is showing himself to be more of a leader than a manager, but we'll take a closer look at that as well. So here's this kind of people-task distinction, and management looking more at tasks or structure or functions like planning, budgeting, evaluating, and facilitating projects, whereas leaders are looking more at relationships in the organization, not only personal, interpersonal relationships, but relationships within units of organizations and groups of people. And they're focused more on selecting talent and motivating others and coaching people and building trust in the organization, if you will. So back to Luigi's summary of some of this that we just covered. Managers need fundamental people and task skills as well as a handy toolkit to do things right. Hands-on implementation, if you will. So very much involved with the day-to-day operation. Leaders, on the other hand, need to discern the right things to do and inspire others toward the vision they cast. So there they have more hands-off guidance of what's going on versus hands-on implementation. So one visual that might help with understanding that is here we have the leader out front bringing people along with the work that they're doing. On the other hand, the manager is more focused on the work and getting people to do the work very, very directly, if you will. Now, Ellie Neves here in her article in The Fairy God Boss, I love that title, draws a number of distinctions we haven't done yet. Another way to look at the difference between leaders and managers are as follows. Leadership is being mission-driven, so purpose-driven, mission-driven in terms of the organization's purpose, while management is task-driven, getting things done. Leaders tend to coach, support, more so than direct, which is what managers tend to do. While a leader keeps a team focused on the overall purpose of their work, a manager keeps a team focused on completing those tasks. Now, this is interesting. Leaders can be transformational and inspire people to achieve high quality work, while managers control people and their work. Leaders are innovative while managers follow the books. Leaders take risks while managers control risks. So you can see some tension here that could develop between a leader or leadership and managers who want to maintain things in the most effective, efficient way, are not likely to want to take risk, whereas leaders, to be innovative and to move things forward and improve and change, need to take risk and help managers come along with that. So back to Luigi's summary here of a little bit of this last part here. What I'm effectively saying is that leaders set the direction in the organization. That's their main purpose. They inspire and motivate people to achieve the vision that they have for where the organization is going. And then here's the key thing. They align the inputs and efforts of organizational stakeholders. That's everybody from employees to clients to collaborators to partners to stakeholders to not only keep that vision alive, but to fulfill that vision. And so they're really there to create a culture that will help bring the vision to life. Managers, on the other hand, are executing that leader's vision within budget and allocated resources. And they manage the teams that will execute the vision and solve operational problems as they pop up. So in summary, here's a graphic that I think captures a lot of the words that we've used thus far. I want to emphasize first, though, where there's common ground, both leaders and managers, and those who lead and those who manage, really are in an organization to accomplish some goal, some outcome, if you will, in the organization. So they have to be somewhat aligned. Where the leader might articulate the vision, I think the manager would be more the one to explain the vision, but in essence, they're both doing the same thing there. Leaders and managers can be figureheads in the organization. They motivate others, certainly in different ways sometimes. Managers, as we'll see here in a minute, might be more in the tell-sell versus leaders might be more in the trust and empower. And then finally, they both have to mobilize resources in the organization to fulfill the mission. So that's their common ground, but you can see these distinctions here that draw a pretty strong dichotomy between the two notions. And I just want to highlight a couple that we haven't touched thus far, and the one about creating value. So leaders are most interested in making sure that the organization is creating the highest amount of value from their resources to the customer that they can. And in a real way, they appeal to the heart, if you will, of people to do so. Managers, on the other hand, are measuring or counting value. They're the ones making sure the value is being delivered in a measurable, concrete way. And they tend to appeal more to that rational side of things. Otherwise, I think we've seen most of these words to date. Maybe one more distinction here is that good leaders are often seen as people who ask questions, who look to remove barriers, who listen very carefully to their constituents, whereas managers more so are giving directions to people to get things done. So let's put this notion of leader and manager on a continuum from one pure end to the other pure end, meaning a pure manager and a pure leader. And so a manager-oriented leadership, if you will, is a high use of authority. So that's telling. I'm going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to tell you probably how to do it. So very directive, very authoritative, or authoritarian, I should say. And then that gradually works its way over to a very open, democratic, empowering nature of a team-oriented leader working with their organization. So in between, we have this notion that some managers move beyond telling and selling their idea of what should be done or needs to be done. Then perhaps even more softly, if you will, or more indirectly suggesting what needs to be done. Finally, they may consult with their employees as to what gets to be done, but still retain the right to make decisions. And now we start to move toward the leadership side, where the manager slash potentially leader here joins the team in understanding what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and giving more power to the individuals to do what needs to be done. Finally, delegating is really empowering people to get things done. The manager is going to still stay a little bit more in control in terms of checking in, maybe making sure that things are being done in the right way, whereas the leader is really going to entrust people. They'll only come back to them maybe with problems or issues, if you will. Maybe even come back to them with solutions that they confirm. And then finally, I don't care for this term abdicates. What I think a very democratic, open leader does is empower and entrust people in the organization to move forward and do what needs to be done. So you could think of this whole thing on a continuum from one pure end to the other pure end is one way to look at it in terms of what management versus leadership is about. Now, I would say that it's also true that managers can and need to lead, but don't always do so. So to the degree that they are involved, say, for example, in selecting talent and coaching talent, they're leading in the organization, whereas leaders can and do manage, but don't have to manage all the time. So you have some people who retain certain operational responsibilities, even though they're seen as leaders in the organization. And we'll get into that a little bit more when we look at some profiles of key leaders in the business world. So here's where I really want to make the point that they encompass each other in some way, and they're related, even though they're distinct in both the literature and in practice, in that you can see a blend, if you will, of the two. And just to highlight that a little bit more so, here you might have, say, on the left side, the pure manager who plans and budget, organizes and staffs, controls and solves problems. On the right-hand side, you might have that leader who's more of setting direction, aligning people, motivating, inspire. But in the middle, you might have the person being both a manager and a leader. Not only do they need to work together if they're separate, but in some cases, you may be both. You actually may have responsibilities that put you in a position where you have to lead as well as manage. So I thought it'd be fun for a few minutes here to look at some business leaders that are of hopefully some notoriety here to you, and you've seen these before, and you might even weigh in on your opinion here. Um, but I wonder if you would see them more as leaders or managers, and or visionaries, or more functional managers, if you will. And so, while I can't get all of your opinions here at once, I'll offer mine, and then maybe in the Q&A, or um, you might want to offer a clarifying question, or offer your perspective here. But Steve Jobs has always been touted as a great visionary. Obviously, Apple wouldn't be here without Steve Jobs. Steve clearly saw something in what people might want or need that people didn't even realize they did. And that's a pretty good definition of being visionary. But when you came to design, he was definitely hands-on. He was he was known to be very autocratic in his style there at times. And that certainly comes out in his autobiography as well, or his biography, or what that was written about him. So you can see aspects of both, even in someone who is touted as a pure visionary. So certainly interesting relationship with him in those two. Alan Mulally led Ford, particularly known to have led Ford through the time of bailouts with the other companies where they didn't take a bailout with the government. When he came from Boeing to run Ford, he eventually became known as a very strong visionary leader in the organization, really setting the tempo and tone of Ford's success. But when he first came on board, he was very much a hands-on restructuring and cost-cutting manager in order to get Ford in the shape that it needed to be. So again, you see an aspect of management here, even in some of the best leaders. Now, Howard Schultz, I know a lot about. I've read both of his books, and I'm a big fan of his. And certainly, his vision was a very small spark coming from visiting cafes in Italy, where he thought, geez, there's one on every corner. Why can't we have that in America? That small little spark of a vision is what has transpired into being a worldwide phenomenon. And so clearly a visionary. But if you read his books and you get to know Howard pretty well, particularly in the early stages of the business, he was very hands-on with quality. Even though he had one of the best coffee connoisseurs who was very much understood quality, Howard, that he felt was the most important distinction Starbucks had in the marketplace and go-to-market strategy. So he was very, very hands-on with that. And you'll see also that he left and came back. And when he came back, he had to do, again, some more managing than leading to get the organization back in shape after his first departure. Richard Branson, I put him in here because I do think that as a whole, he's viewed more of a visionary leader. I don't see as much evidence of him in the management realm. So I wanted to offer that I think he is closer to that pure leader view. Maybe you see that differently. Maybe you know something I don't. Meg Whitman, definitely more of a pure leader. She took, I think eBay I read from like 5 or 8 million up to some 800 billion. I mean, just some phenomenal, incredible numbers. And she had come from Hewlett Packard prior to that. So she rarely got involved in the details of the business and really just drove the vision of a marketplace, if you will. She's now with Quibi. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're an interesting company to take a look at. She said she wasn't going to run another company, but here she is. Mary Barra, she was just in the news again today. Actually, I was reading where she's going to get involved with a little bit of the unrest and issues around racial injustice in her organization. But prior to that, when she came on board, she very much took on the issue of Switchgate, where there were many recalls, and really managed that PR and potential fiasco very, very well. So she knows how to manage. She grew up in the organization, 38 years managing different units and groups, if you will, within the organization. And so she has that nice, I would say, balance between being visionary and also being a manager. She's known to listen well as a leader today and really understand where people's needs are and be responsive to people's needs, both inside the organization and outside. Jeff Bezos, I'm going to put him more on the pure visionary side. Definitely from the beginning seed of being a marketplace, obviously a little different than eBay, but they've morphed in a lot of ways to look like eBay with multiple sellers, if you will, on their sites. But going from the idea of a bookstore to a grand store, and now web hosting and other things, he's definitely been at the forefront. Although I understand an article I read recently, he stepped into an operations meeting from his senior vice presidents. So the leader always retains the right to step in a management perspective and look at things more closely. This person may not be as notorious or I guess have much notoriety is what I mean, as others on this list, but Ursula Byrne is an African-American woman who is the CEO of Xerox. And I would put her a little bit more in the management. She came on once they really got into the digital world of document management, and she has really maintained their success there and been a steady Eddie for the organization. Be interested to see if you see any visionary aspects to her leadership. I'm not seeing anything compelling there myself from my study of her. And then finally, Satya Nadella. He's really been in the news a lot lately. But ever since he took over in 2014, he's established himself as a very democratic and open leader. Of course, he came from the web hosting, web-based side of the business, and he set a clear vision that that hosting and handhelds, if you will, were the future. Mobile were the future of Microsoft, which is what's transformed them over the last 6 years into a powerhouse again. And but he leads with compassion and empathy, and really is in tune with his people. So I hope those illustrate some of the, again, distinctions and commonalities of the two, the relationship that they have when it comes to leadership and management. So let's transition over, Sherry, to a couple of programs that we created, if you will, to build on this notion of leading and managing.
Great. And thank you for that analysis of individuals that have played both roles. And before we jump in, actually, there is a question which is kind of perfect for this timing.
All right.
So the question is, how do you find the proper mix of managing and leading in daily interactions? So the proper mix.
Yeah, that's the search for the Holy Grail, if you will. I mean, you know, knowing when and where to be which one in your role is really important. You know, I don't see many functional roles without some management aspects. So you know, whether you're controlling the budget or you know, making sure things get done, you've always got some aspect of management in there. But looking beyond just the daily to-dos and seeing where you need to go in your future as an organization or as a group or as a department, that's really where the leadership needs to happen. You know, maybe a good analogy is, you know, that Google, for example, gives people sort of that flex day or flex time or time off or whatever to do whatever they feel is necessary, whether it's meditate or play or just think clearly. In some ways, you got to take that time to think about, you know, how you can be leading more than just managing. Managing is just going to maintain the status quo. So, you know, challenging yourself, pushing yourself to make sure that you are looking and finding some ways to lead the organization is really the key. But I don't know that there's an actual 50-50 balance, so to speak. It can vary in ratio depending on job, role, industry, demands, issues. It's much more complex than say 50-50 or something like that.
Good, thank you. So moving into our two programs that we offer in these topics, Why did you develop these two courses and what makes them unique?
So to the points we've been making, we wanted a couple of programs that address the distinct aspects of both leadership and management. So that's why we have two different programs. We have Transformational Leader or Transformational Leadership, which really looks more purely at becoming a leader in the organization, in addition to having maybe management responsibilities. And then for those who really, there's no shame in being either just a manager or a leader or both. There's certain fundamentals of management that are just necessary and foundational that we wanted to make sure managers were getting, whether they were just becoming managers or they've been around for 7 years or even 10 years. And so what makes them unique, I think we'll look at here, is their design in terms of what they cover and how they cover it. So I think that's next, isn't it? Let's see here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we do talk about it.
The titles give us a little insight into what makes them unique. Let's look at transformational leadership first. We follow a flow in transformational leadership around leading self, leading others and teams, and leading in the organization. So you can see the first three topics really are looking at you as a leader in terms of your own practices, your own emotional intelligence, and your own ability to influence authentically. From there, we're looking out at building trust and leading others as a coach and creating high-performing teams is really that relational aspect. And then when you're leading in the organization, especially as a leader, you need to lead significant organizational change. And that requires some complexity and some challenge in terms of cross-functional aspects of change. We're going to teach you a little bit about the latest in human-centered design that can be used to accelerate innovation, bring some new dimensions to it. And we're going to teach you how strategic thinking plays a role in going to market. We wrap that all up with leadership in today we can call it a hyper-VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, where particularly in today's environment, we need to know how to do that in a time that's very, very, very fluid that we're living in at the moment. Fundamentals of management really looks at the basic things you need to have as a manager. So as you come into management, what are the basic challenges and changes for you coming into that role, whether you're from an individual contributor or project manager? So we're really looking at adapting to the role in that first part of it, learning to leverage your influence, and then making sure you know how to hire, engage, and retain people. Those are some critical foundational capabilities as a manager. From there, we look at, again, moving out a little bit toward working with others, building capability through coaching. So this is about making sure your people have the skills, abilities, resources they need to do the job that they need to do. A little different than leader as coach, where you're really developing them for their future abilities. And then dealing with conflict and fundamentals of teamwork. A little more basic here in the teamwork aspect than creating high performance teams, just some foundational elements if you're going to lead a team. Leading change that works looks a little bit more at project-oriented change versus organizational change. So again, a little different view there. And then we get into some things that can really help you navigate your role internally and externally with negotiation strategies and decision-making biases. We wrap this one up with a program called the Exceptional Manager that looks at integrating these aspects of your skill sets going forward. So these are all very competency-based, skill-based courses. There's clear takeaways from each and every program that you get out of these.
Great. So moving into who teaches in the program, I just wanted to highlight before we jump into that both of these programs are on Tuesday nights. So they are 10 different Tuesday nights.
Yep.
And that means we have 10 different instructors, 10 for transformational leadership and 10 for fundamentals of management.
Right.
And the topics that they offer are different. So let's talk more about who are they and what methods do they use?
Yeah, so we use both our full-time and part-time SMU Cox faculty. that teach in the respective area that they are going to teach in here for us as well. And we do use some affiliate facilitators as well. So for example, when it comes to change, we have an affiliate faculty member called Patty Johnson. She teaches the change. She's written a book on change. So we really recognize her as that expert. Whereas, our full-time faculty, the chair of the organizational or management department, Marcus Butts, teaches the leveraging influence. So, it's a mix of both, and really getting the right person to teach the right subject so that you're getting the maximum amount that you can in those 3 hours. As far as how we teach, we really do mix it up. It's really important that there be a mixed modality or multimodality learning environment in our classrooms. So there typically is going to be some pre-reading. There'll be cases and stories that are told within the session. There'll be application exercises, group work that happens in the classroom. There's even a simulation that we do in the team building workshop that I conduct, which is a lot of fun. There'll be demonstration of behaviors and interactions and skills. I know Jerry, when it comes to trust, will demonstrate how you build trust very specifically with very, very specific language and behavior. Of course, there's one-on-one interaction between participants, individual reflection, and usually some video components to highlight certain aspects of learning as well.
So I wanted to highlight that and mention that one of the things that's wonderful about sitting in a classroom with other individuals at different levels is that you're also learning from their experiences. Yeah. And as you test out a tool that we deliver one night, the next week you can hear feedback immediately from the other participants of how those tools worked and how they might be better or ways to enhance those. So I think that's a great classroom learning experience that carries on. So in this next session is what can I expect to learn from the program and what will I be able to apply right away? So I guess I sort of gave that away.
Well, you're headed in the right direction. That's where we're going. So with fundamentals of management, I want to highlight a couple of things that I think are unique to that program. We're focusing on management skills and improving those skills, certainly, but we really want you to establish an approach that works for you. And part of how we go about doing that is at the end of each class, you'll have an action plan for what you're going to implement. And ultimately, jumping to number 5, you're creating an actionable development plan that helps you grow in those particular skill sets back on the job. So ultimately, we're enhancing your capacity to grow as a manager and develop others. We want you to gain a positive approach to people and problem solving. And really, you're learning to implement strategies from evidence-based research on today's most valued management topics. That's what makes us unique here in executive education. We bridge that world between what our academics are seeing from the research and how that's being practiced in the marketplace and bringing those two worlds together. In leadership, transformational leadership, we really want you to establish a style that works for you. Imitating what other leaders do or how other leaders lead, that's really not how you're going to establish your own unique style. You need to come in touch with, how you lead as who you are. And so that becomes a real focus of ours. Understanding your purpose, your power and your presence is one of our topic areas so that you can shine in the way that you best lead. And again, relating to 5, you're going to come out with an actionable development plan. You'll have action plans at the end of each session and ultimately have a development plan for yourself in terms of where you can go as a leader going forward. In this program, we do really want to emphasize and enhance your capacity to understand and implement change at an organizational level. That's really going to be a key aspect of leading at the highest levels. And so, again, we're going to give you a positive approach to leading people, and this way you can enhance your value to the organization. And here we're going to use that same evidence-based research approach on what we think are the most valued leadership topics. Now, we've run this program a few times now, and each time and again we get feedback that these are the right topics. These are the ones that make sense. They really are relatable topics, and so we really feel really strongly about the topics that we're using in this program.
So before we jump into that, Luigi, we have a question from Ricardo, and
okay.
This is important. How do you measure the improvement in leadership capacities from this program?
Well, we're not doing the measuring, you're doing the measuring, if you will, because you're the one setting your action plan, and you're the one who's going to ultimately create your development plan. And what we do is we look to hold you accountable throughout the program and each week in looking to implement those skills and strategies. We discuss it at the beginning of each program or each class, what you've done in the last week to implement the skill and how that may have had impact. And so we often hear very, very quickly the improvements that occur for people between one session and the next. You know, ultimately that's going to be your responsibility because what you get out of it is what you're going to put into it as far as applying some of this information. With transformational leadership, I will say that the 5 practices, though, we do have you kind of set a baseline from where you are today and where you can go. So you could use an assessment there. There is both a self-assessment and 360 assessment that you could take either after the program is over or maybe a few months later to see where you thought you were and where you are today. So that possibility exists for someone who might like to do that with this particular program, because we do use the 5 practices is a measurable behavioral 30 behavior assessment.
Good. So moving into who should apply.
Yeah, you know, in the fundamentals of management, we're looking for those with the title of manager. Very much that's very appropriate. Often IT and engineering managers are making a transition from a technical lead or technical contributor to a manager role. This would be a great program to help them make that transition. Maybe even somebody who's being targeted for promotion to manager. Often the path today as a project manager that'll be the testing ground for someone to move into management. So that could be a possibility as well, preparing yourself to enter that role. For transformational leadership, we're really looking for people at the director level title and above. They're potential succession candidates, meaning they may be people who are being considered for VP level or higher, and really want to take their leadership to the next level, that pure sense of what leadership is about.
Good, I think that helps. So as we get moving to the end of the sessions here, I just wanted to highlight our fundamentals of management timing and then when these classes will be offered. The first one that starts is Fundamentals of Management on September 15th. I mentioned it's 10 Tuesday nights, so it concludes on November 17th. And then the Transformational Leadership class begins before that. Excuse me, I said that backwards. It begins before that. It begins on September 8th and concludes on November 10th. So again, these are 10 sessions on Tuesday nights. And I did want to mention also that, you know, now that we are in a COVID world and looking to welcome our students back to campus in the fall, we will be offering these classes both live and online, meaning that those who want to come to campus would also benefit from a joint dinner that the 2 programs have together before the class begins. So that's a good way to network with other individuals in the classes that meet on Tuesday nights. And for those who want to take the class online, we'll be offering it in sort of a simulcast version so that they'll be able to participate in the same class live. And then I wanted to highlight the Cox Leadership Academy, which Luigi will talk a little bit about next. And it's an upper level program that we're launching first this year. So I'll turn it over to Luigi to give some highlights about how that.
Yeah, if you're in the audience and you happen to be vice president level or above, you might want to consider something a little more intensive than a 30-hour program. We have an 80-hour program. It's a 6-month program, 2.5 days every other month. Just about every other month, about every 8 to 9 weeks, except that period between November and February with the holiday. And here, you know, we're going to intensify. It'll follow the same theme as transformational leadership in terms of leading self, leading others in teams, leading in the organization. We'll add an element, though, about leading across the enterprise at the highest level. And what that means, there'll be an additional 6 sessions of coaching that'll be provided to you in this program. And you'll also have an action learning project where you'll work with either your teammates from your own organization or a group of people in the program to practice what you're learning in the program and see some results from the lessons you're learning. So this one is definitely more intensive. It's a total of 80 hours over the course of 10 full days. But it is spaced out for spaced repetition and a chance to practice what you're learning. And really a robust program.
Great, thank you. So here's a couple questions that tie into this. So one is, what is the normal class size for these programs?
About 20 to 25 is where we tend to end up for these programs. So it's not too small, not too big.
Great, thank you. And one other question, I just wanted to distinguish that the programs that we offer here, these ones we're talking about today, are certificate-based programs, which fall under our non-degree process. So at the end of the 10 weeks, there is a certificate from the Cox School of Business that you have earned over the 30 hours spent in leadership and management focus. There was a question, does this webinar give you a certificate? So unfortunately, no. You do need to enroll for the class, and then you can earn their certificate. So moving into the fall schedule, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that we're offering across the portfolio. So we mentioned that these two programs begin in September, actually all three of them, including the Cox Leadership Academy. We also have another specific program called Rising Latino Leaders, which begins September 14th. This is also part of our Latino Leadership Initiative, of which Cox has made a very big stand in helping to develop mid-level and senior level Latino leaders. And that's part of the Cox School of Business. So we're very proud of that association and what we bring. So you'll see a few of those programs listed here. So moving into October, this is, we're doing a leading organizational change, which is a computer-based simulation on taking an organization through change. And so that will be a one-day event that starts in October. Then we have a Women in Leadership program, which we're launching this year on October 5th. And then Master Negotiation, which will be on October 6th, led by Dr. Robin Pinkley, who is a renowned researcher in the gain-gain negotiation method. So this is an excellent class if whether you're negotiating for your next raise or whether you're negotiating for a government contract. We do have an advanced phase of that. So we're talking about negotiating with the Pentagon in that program. And then moving into November, we have a merger and acquisitions class, which is led by Dr. Shane Goodwin, who's done a lot of real world acquisitions through his roles in capital markets and investment banking. And then in November, we're also launching a new program called Building the Intelligent Enterprise. And this program is about taking data-driven decision-making and seeing where you are in your corporation on the spectrum of what's coming in the pipeline, whether that's the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. It'll be moderated by Hedy Tabor, who is head of our Master in Data Analytics program. So we're excited to bring that program forward. And then year-round, we offer custom programs. So if you're hearing something that you think you need to bring to your company, any of these topics that we're talking about today can be customized and brought into a program directly for a company. So that's a big part of what we do here at the Cox School of Business, and as we work with companies around the Dallas area and the North Texas area as well. So I do have a couple more questions that popped in. Yes, we will definitely send everybody a copy of this presentation.
Yep.
At the end, you'll have both the video and the slide deck that will also live on our website. So anytime you want to come back and review this, it will also stay on our website. The question is, how much does it cost? So it being the two programs on our Tuesday nights are $4,495, but we are offering an early registration discount of $200 if you can enroll before 30 days of the start of the program. So those will be available on our website, all the information about that. And so in conclusion, let me make sure I'm not missing any other questions. No, I think I got that. So in conclusion, I hope you can reach out to both Luigi and I. And anytime you have questions on the topics or the logistics of the programs, how they'll operate, and anything else that might spark your interest on management versus leadership and how you can improve in all of those areas, we'd be happy to have conversations with you going forward. So our contact information is here, so feel free to reach out. So at this point, Luigi, if you have anything else you want to wrap up with?
Just maybe just mention the price point on the academy, since we did, so they asked the pricing.
Okay.
That program is at $18,000. As I said, much more robust, much more intensive, and a lot more resources we're going to provide there. So just so you're aware, and again, VP level and above for that one.
So again, thank you all for participating with us today. I hope you've learned a little bit about the differences between leadership and management. Know that we'll take it much deeper if you can join us on Tuesday nights and or across any of our programs in the portfolio. So we thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you on campus either in person or virtually soon. Thanks so much. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you.